Will you pray with me? Holy One, may the words of my lips and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight. We long for this because you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Is this not a strange text for the beginning of Advent? The season when we prepare for the birth of the baby. The season with starshine and animals and shepherds and angels. Is this not a weird text for that moment? The powers of the heavens being shaken, the sea overwhelming the people, the nations trembling, people fainting in fear and foreboding. Pray that this does not happen to you, Jesus says. Is that not funny for the Christmas season? They give us this text. We don't have to read it, but they suggest we read this text at this time of year. And so I'm reading it now, but I think it's weird because it doesn't quite match up with what we're all supposed to be feeling at this time of year. But for another reason too, that one line, that one verse, this generation will not pass away before all these things come to pass. Jesus sat there on the Mount of Olives and he said that to his disciples. This generation, you friends who are sitting here, will not die before this comes to pass. And here we are 2,000 years later. C.S. Lewis, the great Christian thinker, said that that is the most embarrassing verse in the entire Bible. But he understood it this way. He thought of time in a sort of linear progression, right? The beginning of everything when God calls the world into being, and then there's the Garden of Eden, and then there's the people of Israel wandering in the desert, and then there's Jesus being born, and then there's the crucifixion and Easter, and then there's the end of time, which he thought was what Jesus was describing here. The end of time, the end of this world, when we are forced to evolve into whatever will come next. And everything before it will then be nothing but a prologue. You and I will then be nothing but a prologue for what the world has become. He assumes that minute follows minute, hour follows hour, day follows day, from the beginning and to the end. And that end is what Jesus was describing in the passage here today. And if that's how you understand it, then it is indeed a bit of a problem that it didn't happen when Jesus said it was going to. Here's the story of Christmas, though. The story we're preparing for in Advent. The powers of the universe. The powers that called the powers of the universe into being. The most powerful things we know in this story become concentrated in one baby, in one human life. And that one human life then changes everything. Right? The powers that created everything become focused and then refracted and sent back out, and then the universe is never the same again. That's what we claim happens at Christmas. That's what we say we're waiting for, preparing for in Advent. And if you think that what Advent is about, what this moment that we're in now is about being trapped between the first coming of Jesus at Christmas and the second coming of Jesus in the story described here, if you think that what this is all about is being trapped, waiting between those two moments, and you think that Jesus claimed that that second moment was supposed to have happened a long time ago, then that's a bit of a problem. But if you take Christmas seriously, that all the cosmos can be focused in one life, then maybe this is how it works. That long story, from the beginning of everything there in the garden to the fulfillment of everything there at the end with the fear and the trembling, maybe that long arc of salvation history, maybe that's not about the kind of history where moment follows moment and year follows year until we all get there together. Maybe all of that is focused in your life. Maybe that story is not the story of the universe, of the cosmos only. Maybe it's the story of that lady's life right there, Alice's life, or the story of my life, or yours. Because don't you remember living in the garden? Don't you remember when you were young and naked? Where someone provided your food for you, where you didn't have anything to worry about, or any work to do, or any big questions that you asked yourself. Don't you remember those days when life was good and easy, and you were fresh and new? And maybe you thought you had it hard. Maybe it drove you nuts that someone else told you what to do and where to go and took care of you and parented you more than you wanted. But don't you remember how good it felt? From this side, don't you know how good you had it then? And then you took a bite of that fruit one day. Or maybe some serpent forced you to take a bite of the fruit before you were ready. And you learned a thing or two. Not all of them things that you wanted to learn, maybe. And you stepped out of that garden and into the world. And it was hard. You were responsible for yourself. You had decisions to make. You had people depending on you. There was no one to care for you. If you were going to eat, you had to work. If you were going to have a future, you had to build it, and it was hard. And sometimes it felt like wandering. Sometimes you were lost. And then one day, wasn't something born to you as shiny as a newborn baby. Maybe it was a baby. Maybe it was just a new love. Maybe it was a new future. Didn't something open up for you until you could see a way forward, a direction to go, a place to aim, a purpose to strive for? And then, if you're like the rest of us, didn't you screw it up? Or didn't someone else screw it up for you? Didn't you make that bad decision or go the wrong way? Didn't someone else's bad decision mess up everything? Don't you remember that phone call? Or the thing she did that you will never get over? Or the news you got that one day? And didn't it feel like all that hope was nailed to a tree? Like all you wanted to do was to climb into a tomb and stay there. And then one day, didn't you catch a glimmer of light outside the door of that tomb? Didn't it look like the sun just starting to rise? And didn't then the sun rise full and bright over the graveyard you'd been lying in? And didn't you have a future again? Maybe this isn't how your life works. But I hear a lot of stories, and I'm living a life of my own, and I want to tell you that so far, that's what seems to be true for most people. The hope is born, and then it seems to die. And then it's born again, and then it all goes south again, whether your fault or someone else's or just nobody's fault, just circumstance. Then the hope goes down into the tomb, and then it's born again. And here's what Jesus says it's going to be like before it's all over for you on this mortal coil. That one day the sky will fall, if it hasn't already. One day you will faint with fear and foreboding. One day you will hear the nations losing it all around you. You will hear the roar of the sea in your ears. You will fall to your knees in terror. And here's what Jesus says will happen then. When clouds are all around and you cannot see a way forward, you will look up. And something will catch your eye, and it will make you rise as tall as you can and raise your head, and you will say, I know you. And you will see him coming to you in clouds and in glory. and together you will go home. This generation will not pass away before these things have come to pass. I believe that this generation, that we will not pass away before these things have come to pass. That line, it's an embarrassment if you think it's about the second coming of Jesus and the ending of all humanity. But if what you think it's about is your own life, well then what it's about is hope. So if you can, will you rise to your feet? Raise your head, for your redemption is drawing nigh, and sing.